Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. I'm Barbara Kyle, and I'm speaking to you from Ontario, Canada, from a small city called Guelph. In this webinar, I'm going to be telling you about the three things that agents and publishers want to see, really need to see, in the first 30 pages or so of your manuscript. And it's going to take us about half an hour. Just going to check that we're recording here, and we are. Thank you for joining me right on time. I appreciate that. But I know there are a lot of people joining in from many different places, different time zones. I think we have people right across the continent and beyond. So I'm just going to give it just a minute to let everybody join in from wherever they are and get settled in. Before we do get started, I'd love to know just a little about you. Where are you joining in from? Do you see the Q&A box that's at the bottom of your screen? If you click that Q&A box, then you can type in and your answer. And so please go ahead right now and tell me where you are. Just type in where you are. And I see that lots of you are doing so right now. So I'm going to pull that up and have a look. Good. We have Amy in Fort Myers, Florida, and Mary in Sacramento. Sarah's in Chicago. DC is in Cambria, I think it is, California. Estee, hello, Estee. Amelie, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is in Somerville, Oregon. Mia in Potomac, Maryland. Juanita is in Scottsdale, Arizona. Thank you so much. I'm seeing everybody signing in here. This is great. We have Bernard is in Saratoga Springs, New York. Michelle is in Toronto, not too far from where I am. Andy is in Maplewood, New Jersey. This is great. Thank you so much. Eric in Tallahassee, Florida. And Corey, and this is wonderful. Thank you. It's very nice for me to see where everybody is. And I know that there are also, everyone I've sort of noticed so far is in the United States and Canada, but I know that there are some people who've registered from the United Kingdom and Australia. So let me just close that box. Good. All right. I will be glad to take your questions. I'll do so at the end of my talk here today. As I say, the webinar is going to take us about half an hour. So when I'm finished my remarks, then I will take your questions. Feel free to type in your questions at any time into that Q&A box. Sometimes it's good to type in your question just so you don't forget it, maybe. And so type them in at any time. And then when I'm finished my talk today, I'll get to your questions, as many as I can. We'll see how we are for time. Okay, so let's get started on the three things that agents and publishers really want to see in the first 30 pages or so of your manuscript. First, let me make one thing really clear. There are no rules in writing. Any rule that has ever been proposed has been broken by some writer somewhere to very good effect. So there are no hard and fast rules in writing, but there are principles that have shaped the art of storytelling for centuries. A rule says you must do this, but a principle says this works, and it has worked through all of remembered time. So it behooves us as writers to be aware of these principles so that we can use them to best effect in our writing to produce truly compelling stories. And that's what I love to teach. Years ago, when I was just starting to write, I'm talking about many years ago, when I was just starting to write seriously, my mentor was author Marion Fowler. And Marion used to say, there's only one rule in writing: thou shalt not bore. Good advice. Marion Fowler was the writer in residence at the small library in the rural community where I used to live back then. She's the one who got me started on my writing career by critiquing my very first short story. And that story was pretty bad at first, but with Marion's help, I rewrote it and rewrote it and rewrote it, just as I'm sure many of you are doing right now with your own writing, until finally it was in pretty good shape. And when I entered it in a competition, and it went on to win first place, which made me very happy. So that was, as I say, many years ago. Since then, I have had 10 novels published by major New York publishers, and over 500,000 copies of my novels have been sold around the world. But it all began with that first short story. I'm so grateful to Marion for opening my eyes to what was possible as far as a career, but also opening my eyes to what was necessary as far as the work of writing. Writing is very pleasant work, but it is work. So she opened my eyes to all of that. And I think every writer needs a mentor. And I was just very lucky to have Marion. So that's why I like to, as they say, pay it forward. So that's kind of a bit of what we're doing today. All right, let's look at the 3 crucial elements that need to be in your book's first approximately 30 pages. I'm going to share my screen with you now, so just hold on for a minute. Good. Only one rule in writing: thou shalt not bore. That's a good one to keep in mind. The 3 things that agents and publishers really must see in the first 30 pages or so of your manuscript. And here they are. Number 1, a clear, inciting incident. Number 2, a main character that we can really care about. And number 3, mastery of effective dialogue to enliven and enrich the action. Now, I'm going to be giving you insights on all 3 of these aspects today, but here is why I call them essential. Agents and publishers are inundated with manuscripts. They read manuscripts during the day and into the evening and all weekend, so they want a story to captivate them immediately. If it doesn't do that in the first pages, they may just stop reading, and I do not want that to happen to you. So let's start with number 1 here, the all-important inciting incident. There's a Bruce Springsteen song called Dancing in the Dark, and it has the lyric, "You can't start a fire without a spark." In any novel, there must be an event that sparks the story to life, and this is called the inciting incident. I chose this image because I think it gives a wonderful sense of the feeling of anticipation at the start of any story. This character may have just experienced the story's inciting incident and is starting out on her journey, or maybe she's just about to experience the inciting incident. Knowing where to start your story is vital, but it's also difficult. There's lots of ways you can start a story effectively. Unfortunately, many new writers begin with lots of paragraphs, sometimes many pages of description about the characters or description about the settings, or they will start with big chunks of backstory. Backstory, of course, is the events in a character's life leading up to the moment when the story begins. A book's opening is definitely not the place for backstory. And here's why. Readers cannot feel involved with a character until they see them in action. Now, when I say in action, I don't mean these characters are necessarily running around with guns. Maybe they are, but they certainly don't have to be. I just mean that the character is engaged in something that matters to them right away. So whether you're writing a mystery, a romance, a thriller, maybe sci-fi, maybe a young adult fantasy, whatever your genre, you want to introduce your main character when something vital to them is already at stake. Now, this, by the way, is before we get to the inciting incident, okay? So you do not have to have the inciting incident on page 1 or page 5 or even page 10. I want to just get across to you, first of all, that we want to see your main character engaged in something that really matters to them right away. It doesn't have to be world hanging in the balance stakes, but it does have to kind of feel like that to the character. Let me give you an example. The opening paragraph of Maeve Binchy's novel, Scarlet Feather, introduces the main character, Kathy Scarlet, who has just opened her catering business, and she desperately wants to make a success of it. So on page 1, she is on her way to cater the New Year's Eve party for her wealthy and powerful mother-in-law, who looks down on Kathy, who's the daughter of her maid. So Kathy is well aware of what she is up against. Her mother-in-law's antagonism can break her, certainly break her fledgling business. So success at this New Year's Eve party is vital to Kathy. The point is that this character right away is engaged in something that really matters to her. It's really important to her. And then the inciting incident can occur. I really like the phrase inciting incident because it suggests that necessary spark I was talking about that starts the story, that really gets the story rolling. An event occurs that incites the character to take action. And because the phrase implies action, writers can't fool themselves into thinking that backstory or description constitute an inciting incident. They do not. So what does constitute an inciting incident? Well, here is a definition. The inciting incident is the event that throws your protagonist, your main character's world out of balance. So what that character does to try to regain balance in their life forms the story. A person's life can be horribly upset, of course, by a murder. That's how all murder mysteries start. Or their world can be unbalanced by a call to war, or maybe by getting fired. The event, though, does not have to be a negative one. Not at all. Somebody's life can definitely be upset by not winning the lottery, or by getting married, or maybe going on a date that changes their life. There was an author who lived some years ago who was really good at writing inciting incidents. You might have heard of him. His name was William Shakespeare. In Shakespeare's play Hamlet, the inciting incident occurs in scene 4, and the first 3 scenes are very short. In scene 4, Hamlet is astounded at seeing the ghost of his dead father. That's amazing enough, but then the ghost speaks to him. His father's ghost tells Hamlet that he was murdered by his own brother, Hamlet's uncle, Claudius. This extraordinary event instantly upsets the balance of Hamlet's life, needless to say, and it incites his desire for revenge. The actions that Hamlet takes in his quest to avenge his father is what this play is all about. He goes about it in a very Hamlet-like, introspective way. Nevertheless, he never stops going after trying to get justice, trying to avenge his poor father's murder. Look at the inciting incident in a classic novel, a little bit closer to our own time, The Wizard of Oz, made, of course, into the iconic movie. In the story, The Wizard of Oz, the novel was written by L. Frank Baum. The story begins with Dorothy living her normal life with her aunt and uncle on their Kansas farm, a very boring life in Dorothy's eyes, when a tornado strikes and sweeps her away. That is the inciting incident, utterly upsetting the balance of Dorothy's life. And notice that before that occurs, we get to see Dorothy in her normal life and all the people that she lives with. It's very important that those things, and of course, Miss Gulch, who tries to take away her little dog, Toto, these things are very important to Dorothy. And of course, they will play into her life when she arrives in the magical world of Oz. But what I want to get across to you is that the inciting incident then occurs, which is, of course, the tornado, utterly upsetting, literally, the balance of Dorothy's life. And from the moment that tornado strikes, it incites her desire, her need, from the moment she arrives in the magical land of Oz, to get back home. And she takes actions constantly to try to do that. Look at the inciting incident in a much more recent best-selling novel, also made into a movie, Gone Girl, the noir thriller by Gillian Flynn. In this novel and the movie, Nick Dunn wakes up on the morning of his 5th wedding anniversary to discover that his wife, Amy, has gone missing. That event totally upsets the balance of Nick's life, and he takes actions right away to try to regain balance, try to find out, of course, what's happened to Amy. Here's another example, The Goldfinch, the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by Donna Tartt. At this book's beginning, teenager Theo Decker and his mother are at an art gallery in New York City, and they're caught in an explosion that kills her. That's not really a spoiler, believe me, because it happens right at the beginning of the book. Anyway, in that explosion, in that horrifying, totally disorienting moment for Theo, that of course upsets the whole balance of his life, his beloved mother is dead. In that awful moment, he, for some reason, grabs a little painting off the wall of that art gallery. And it is an action that will haunt Theo for years through all of the pages of this great big story. Try to have the inciting incident happen as close to your story's opening as possible, but don't rush it. It doesn't have to be on page 1 or even page 10 or 15. Remember, the most important thing is to give your reader someone to care about right away by showing your main character involved in something that matters to them. Or perhaps you might even want to start your story with an antagonist. That's a whole different way, but I want to point out the timeline of your main character in this talk today. So show that character involved in something, just like Kathy Scarlett, involved in something that really matters to them. And then when the time is ripe, bring on the incident that upsets the balance of their life and incites them to take some action. Write a powerful inciting incident, and it must follow as the night the day, that your character will lead you headlong into their conflict, into their world, and into a very compelling story. Okay, so that's the first essential element that needs to be in your first pages, your first 20 or 30 pages, a very clear inciting incident. The second essential element that needs to be in your first 30 pages or so is all about your main character, your story's main character. It's their story that you're telling. Their struggle drives the narrative. So your goal is to create a main character that your readers will really care about. So how do you accomplish that? How do you create an engaging hero or heroine, a person who causes the events of a stirring story? I believe it all boils down to one crucial quality: empathy. Empathy is what is at the core of this. It's about creating an emotional response in your reader, because emotion is how we understand things deeply and how we remember things. It's just how our brains work. We don't remember abstractions that well. We remember something because we feel it. In fact, I believe that we humans are not thinking creatures who can feel. We are feeling creatures who can think sometimes. We're just hardwired this way. So the most essential characteristic of your protagonist is that they elicit the reader's empathy. They don't necessarily have to elicit our sympathy. What's the difference? Well, sympathy means I feel for you, but empathy means I feel with you. I identify. Sympathetic can also mean likable, but empathetic means like me. It means that deep down in that person, in that character, even an unlikable character, the reader recognizes a core of shared humanity. So it's not necessarily about being likable. We empathize for very personal reasons. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. They're both from several decades ago, but I like to talk about them because they were both novels that were blockbuster novels in their time, a few decades ago, and were made into blockbuster movies. The first one is The Godfather. Mario Puzo's novel, The Godfather, made into the iconic movie and its sequels. So in Mario Puzo's novel, The Godfather, Don Corleone is not a nice person. He's a mafia boss. And so he bribes judges and he buys politicians. He has people murdered. And yet we care deeply about the Don. Why? It is because the author, Mario Puzo, very skillfully shows the Don to us in ways that will make us care. At the book's very beginning, we see him as a devoted and loving father, a man to whom family is paramount. So we instinctively warm to that. We can identify with that. Second, Mario Puzo shows us that the Don uses violence only when he's pushed to, when he's been hurt first. We instinctively forgive him for that. Again, we can identify, hurt me and I'll strike back too. And third, we never see Don Corleone hurting anybody. He does all of his dark deeds off stage, as it were. So although of course we know intellectually that he uses violence, he's a mafia boss, for heaven's sake, we know it intellectually, but we don't see it, and so we don't feel it. Whereas we are shown very graphically the violence that the Don's enemies do to him and to those he loves, like when his son Sonny, is gunned down. That we see in gory, graphic detail. And so we feel the Don's pain and his grief. We empathize. Another fine example of a character who's not especially likable, but who definitely elicits our empathy is Scarlett O'Hara, the heroine of Margaret Mitchell's Civil War saga, Gone with the Wind, a blockbuster novel in its day made into a blockbuster film. This book has now lost favor because of its underlying racism. And I think that's a very important and in fact necessary social development. Nevertheless, a study of the artistic creation of its heroine by Margaret Mitchell, the author, can still inspire us as writers just on a purely technical level. When this book opens, Scarlett O'Hara is a vain, spoiled, very selfish girl. I think she's just 16 at the opening of the book. And yet she's someone the reader actually comes to care about. How does Margaret Mitchell accomplish that? Partly it's because we get to see Scarlett's passion so deeply. Even if we don't approve of her, we understand her. We get her being in love to the point almost of obsession because most of us have been in love. But right from the start, our empathy for Scarlett begins because other people, truly good people, feel real affection for her. Mammy likes her. Scarlett's father loves her, and so does her saintly mother. Even Melanie has warm feelings for Scarlett, and so does Ashley. The reader feels a natural human response that if all these other people like this girl, there must be something about her. But perhaps most important is that we feel along with Scarlett because she is such a forceful, willful person. There's not a moment in this great big saga in which this woman is passive. Scarlett inevitably takes action. Eventually, we get to know Scarlett almost as well as ourselves, and that, of course, creates the greatest empathy. But long before that, even when she's utterly selfish and scheming, we can't help admiring her because she's just so incredibly determined. Now, there are some ways that you can create instant empathy for your main character. Let me talk to you about a few of those. Here are 5 ways to create immediate empathy for your main character. First of all, make her good at her job. Whether she's a music teacher or a spy, a Renaissance painter, a criminal lawyer, a doctor, a butterfly collector, whatever, we all admire a person who does their job well. Number 2, give him a sense of humor. I don't mean he's a stand-up comic or even a guy who makes wisecracks all the time. I just mean he's someone who can smile about life. We all warm to such people and to such characters. Number 3, make her the victim of undeserved misfortune. She's maybe fired in a corporate cutback. Maybe she's ridiculed for her appearance or loses a loved one. Oh, remember Stephen King's novel, Carrie? She was ridiculed at school and she responded in an unforgettably scary way. Number 4, put him in physical jeopardy. You want to be careful with this one. You don't want to make him a passive victim for very long. We may feel sorry for him, but to really engage us, to make us feel empathy, he's got to take action to get himself out of jeopardy. And number 5, give her everyday foibles and flaws. She forgets people's names. Maybe she trips on the same step every time. Whatever, giving her everyday foibles like this will just humanize her. Now, please, you do not have to use all 5 of these. These are just some ideas for ways that you can create immediate empathy. Maybe use 1 or 2. You might be able to use all 5. I'm not sure, but I just want to make it clear to you, you certainly don't have to use all 5. They're just ways that you can create immediate empathy. Okay, the third essential element that needs to be really evident in the first 30 pages or so of your manuscript is an effective use of dialogue. Dialogue has a kind of magic, because in a novel, dialogue is the only instance where there is no barrier between the reader and the character. There's no interference from the author giving descriptions or giving explanations. There's just the character expressing their unique voice. They're kind of exposing themselves by their words. That's why readers respond intensely to dialogue. It feels alive. And it's exactly why agents and publishers want to see effective dialogue in your first 30 pages or so. There are several dramatic functions of dialogue, and I'm going to give you 3 of the most important. I'm going to just talk to you about 3 of the most important dramatic functions of dialogue. The first function is to move the story forward. There are countless ways that dialogue does this. A character might reveal information. They might admit something. They might incite another character to act. They might make accusations or maybe lie. They might defend themselves. They might argue their reasons or maybe distract their listener. The possibilities, of course, are endless. The point is this: all effective stories are about conflict. And remember, conflict does not mean combat. It doesn't mean fighting. Conflict just means problems. What problems does the character have? So, good dialogue will always add some degree of tension, whether it's minimal or moderate or extreme, depending on the needs of the scene you're writing. The second important function of dialogue is to establish relationships. People speak differently to different people. For example, if you were going to tell maybe your 13-year-old niece what you learned in this webinar, you would use words very different than if you were telling a fellow writer, wouldn't you? So relationships take on a unique life through dialogue. And knowing this, you can use passages of dialogue strategically to highlight characters' relationships. Look at married couples, a couple that's been married for 30 years, they use almost a shorthand, don't they, in talking to each other. So you can make use of that if you are writing that kind of couple in your novel. The third important function of dialogue is to illuminate a character's individuality. Of course, as writers, we have lots of fun with this. The goal is to create dialogue that is what we call character specific. And that is that each character speaks in their own unique way. The vocabulary that a person uses, the syntax of their speech, their grammar, all of it reveals a great deal about them. For example, the pedantic speech of an English professor is totally unlike the jargon of a kid living on the streets. I mean, look at just the different ways that people will express simple agreement. Somebody might simply say yes. For another, it might be cool or whatever, or you got that right, or splendid notion. Each of these is just a declaration of agreement. I'm sure you can think of many more, but each one reveals something unique about the person who's saying it. It's also effective to kind of pepper a character's dialogue with idioms to individualize them, words or phrases that are just peculiar to that person alone. An example is John Irving's novel, The Cider House Rules, made into a movie. And in this novel, Dr. Larch, he runs an orphanage for boys, and he has a favorite phrase that he often repeats to these orphan boys that he looks after. He says, "You kings of New England, you princes of Maine." Dr. Larch loves saying it, and the reader loves hearing it, or in the movie, I mean hearing it, in the book, reading it. Another example is from the novel The Princess Bride by William Goldman, made into a movie, a quite beloved movie, actually. In the movie, the character that's played by Wallace Shawn, he's the guy at the very bottom of that trio that you're looking at. He's always saying the phrase, "It's inconceivable." He has a bit of a lisp. So he's often saying, "It's inconceivable." And he says it so often that another character finally says to him, "I do not think you understand the meaning of that word." One more note about dialogue is about body language. Body language and gestures are a living part of dialogue. So by punctuating a sequence of dialogue with a character's body language, you can reveal some of their feelings. For example, a woman maybe fidgets with her wedding ring instead of answering a question. Maybe a man rakes his hand through his hair while he's thinking of what to say. A girl might cover her mouth to hide a smile. So gestures like this give rhythm to a scene also. They fill the silences between the characters' spoken lines. And this fine-tunes a scene's pacing. So those are the 3 essential elements that need to be in your first approximately 30 pages of your book to really intrigue agents and publishers enough to read on. Let's just do a quick review of those. Number 1, establish your story's inciting incident, the event that really upsets the balance of their life. Number 2, ensure that we care about your main character. And number 3, enrich the action with effective dialogue. All right. I told you that I would take your questions at the end of my talk, and that's where we are now. So let me just pull up your questions here. By the way, I just wanted to also add that I encourage you to have a look at my website, which is just barbarakyle.com. And there you'll see some resources to help you on your writing journey. You'll see the free resource, which is my YouTube channel. So there's several videos there all about writing. Of course, they're free on YouTube, so have a look at that. You'll find the link to that on my website, barbarakyle.com. And also you'll see some of the programs that I offer that might interest you. One is, I call it Right Start Mentoring. So if you're looking for a mentor, I might be just the person you're looking for. Have a look at that. What I do is I analyze the first 50 pages of your manuscript and help you along with those. So have a look at that on my website. And also coming up in January is the next session of my novel writing masterclasses. These have been very popular in the past. So I have a new session coming up starting in January, novel writing masterclass series. So have a look at all of those things on my website, barbarakyle.com. And now I will look at your questions here. If I can just find the right box to open. Here we are. Okay, I'm seeing a few questions here. Kay is asking, is it easier to publish a collection of short stories or a novel? Kay, I would recommend it's slightly easier to get a novel published than a series of short stories. Short stories are a little bit difficult to sell. They tend to belong in the realm of literary fiction, very literary fiction, which just does not sell as well as popular fiction. And so probably the best route as far as getting published is through a novel rather than a collection of short stories. Still, working on a collection of short stories can certainly lead you into a novel, so don't stop working on those. Amelia is saying, how can you develop empathy for an unlikable main character? Amelia, I think I did mention the whole concept of just creating a character who's really relatable. So just because a person isn't terrifically likable doesn't mean that they won't be relatable, just like Don Corleone or just like Scarlett O'Hara. So think of ways that make your character a person that we can understand completely, kind of in our bones, understand emotionally. And that will always work, whether the character is what we might call likable or reviewer, for example, might say that's an unlikable character, but to the reader, it might be a very empathetic person. So I wouldn't really worry about it too much. You really just want to focus on what aspects of that character are relatable. What can we relate to? How can we feel that we identify with that person? Oh, Amelia's saying a little further on, never mind, I jumped the wagon. No problem, Amelia. We have a question from someone anonymous here saying, are dialogue tags always necessary? That's a great question. Dialogue tags, sometimes called dialogue attribution. A dialogue tag is the he said, she said part of writing dialogue. So this question about are they always necessary? Not always. If you were writing a scene, for example, in which you just have two characters, we call it a two-hander. If there's just two characters speaking, and especially if the reader has a bit of context already about them, you can often leave out the dialogue tag of the he said, she said part, because it will be really clear to the reader. It's all about clarity. If you feel in any way as the author that it's not clear to the reader, then definitely put in the tag. And of course, if you have a scene with many characters, if you have 5 or 6 characters, then it's essential to put in the dialogue tag. Otherwise, your reader will be really lost about who is speaking. So it's not always necessary, especially if it's just two characters talking. You probably don't always need the he said, she said, but you certainly will if it's more characters in a scene. Deborah is asking, can there be a series of inciting incidents that increase in severity? Yeah, that's interesting, Deborah. I would say yes. I would say they need to be leading up to, it's an interesting point that the inciting incident needs to be an event that that character, the main character, is extremely aware of. So for example, the outbreak of war, if it happens just outside of the knowledge of your main character, then that is not an inciting incident for a novel because the character isn't aware of it yet. Character must be aware that the event has upset the balance of their life. They may not know what to do yet or how to take action or what's really going on, but they must be aware that the event has happened that is upset the balance of their life. So to answer your question, I think you could have a series of events, but then at some point that character must be aware, oh my God, this has really affected me in a way that I'm going to have to take some action to get balance back. Hope that answers your question. Just scrolling down here, some more questions here. Ina, or Ina, I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, probably Ina. Do your comments pertain to literary fiction as well as to popular fiction? Oh, absolutely, Ina. All of the elements that I talk about pertain to both literary and to popular fiction. I think that as far as writing dialogue, you'll see a lot more dialogue in popular fiction, popular novels, just more of it. You'll see, it's a funny thing, we call it white space. It's easy to read dialogue because there's a lot of white space on either side of the printing on the page. And so popular novels tend to rely a great deal on dialogue because it makes for a very accessible read. Literary fiction perhaps won't have quite as much dialogue and won't rely so heavily on dialogue, but all of the essential aspects that I'm talking about, yeah, an inciting incident, yes, a main character we care about, and yes, some effective use of dialogue will all be apparent in literary fiction as well as in popular fiction. Kay is saying, thank you. Oh, you're very welcome, Kay. Sarah is saying, I'm writing a memoir, so hopefully my main character, me, is relatable. Do you have any tips regarding this issue in a memoir? Thanks. Yes, Sarah, I think you've got a good handle on it already. Yes, the main character of the story is you. And yes, you do have to use in great memoirs, and I love reading wonderful memoirs, and they're so popular these days. All of these same essential elements absolutely apply, pertain. So make yourself, make your character, make the reader see the event that upset the balance of your life. Make us, of course, care about you. I have no doubt you'll be doing that. And yes, do use dialogue. You're the one who knows what went on as far as people talking to each other. So yes, in great memoirs, you will see effective use of dialogue too. So I think that all of these essential elements, because great memoirs are just great stories, and great storytelling has always used all of these essentials. And I just want to check my time here because I don't want to go. We really are over our time. I'll take one more question here. Wendy is saying, following up on Ina's question, do these three things factor into creative nonfiction memoir as well? Yeah, Wendy, I think you've just heard me say that to Ina about memoir. And yes, creative nonfiction, narrative nonfiction, obviously not in other nonfiction like how-to books or the best walks in Maine or something, but in narrative nonfiction, sometimes called creative nonfiction, absolutely the same essentials apply. The better storytelling we can do, the more accessible and fascinating and engaging to the reader. So memoir, narrative nonfiction, novel, I believe it's all storytelling and we can all use the very same principles. I won't take any more questions now. I can see there are more just because we're past our time today. But do feel free to get in touch with me through my website, barbarakyle.com. You'll see a contact, how to contact me there through email. So do give me your questions if you'd like, and I will answer them if I can. And as I say, have a look also at the other programs that I have going on through my website. I hope those might interest you, barbarakyle.com. Thank you very much for being with me today. I hope it's been helpful to you, and I wish you all the best with your writing. Take care. I'll say goodbye to you now.